My
So
pleasure.
I think on that note, it's a good time for us to kick off. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. This is a webinar by Ojo featuring John Sanei, who has joined us very kindly from his mountain escape in South Africa, where he is in lockdown. So John is a Singularity University faculty member, an author, entrepreneur, and a futurist, and he has just recently come out with 2 ebooks talking about the future going forward after kind of this pandemic and the change that has kind of hit our lives really recently. So we're just going to hand over to John to talk to you a little bit about his books and what he thinks about the future. And then if you have any questions for him, we will then be doing a Q&A to gather any questions and get John's thoughts on things that are on your mind. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to you, John, and let me know if you need to share a screen. I can give you those permissions as well.
No. I've stopped using slides. I've got a whole new way to present that's coming out at the moment. So I'm just going to talk in. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm a big fan of Ojo. I love what you guys are doing. I love the fact that you're changing things up. You're bringing in a younger, more energetic version of connecting, much more for the generation that's coming up. And I'm so happy to be, again, working with you guys after working with you guys a couple months ago. So to everybody that's watching, I know you'll all agree that we find ourselves in a peculiar time. Whoever's got their mic on, can you switch your mic off, please? I don't know who that is. Somebody's got their mic on. If you could please switch your mics off, that'd be great. Thank you so much. So we really find ourselves in no man's land. Nobody's ever been here, and everybody is really looking for some level of certainty. And I made a video a couple of days ago called The Delusion of Certainty. And really, we've arrived at a time in our lives where there is no certainty. And the very fact that we need to look for certainty shows us the fact that we are willing or wanting to look for safety rather than adventure. And in order for us to really take on the responsibility of courage and of adventure, we have to let go of the past. We have to let go of the world we came from. And in my first book, Future Now, in fact, Future Now and Future How are both available for free. I wrote them for people to share. You can go to my website, johnsanei.com/books, and you can download them for free. I'm busy writing the 3rd book in the Future Trilogy series. The first one's called Future Now. The second one's called Future How, and I'm writing Future Next. But in Future Now, I talk about the importance of us catalyzing the energy we require to bring about something new. And I call that point in the book, burn your ships. In other words, try and catalyze yourself to reinvent, recalibrate, and refocus how you come out into this new world. Remember that the last time we had such a massive upheaval was the 14th century and the Black Death. That devastated most of Europe. It fast-tracked the growth of agricultural technology, knowledge sharing, the end of feudalism, which was their capitalism, and the birth of the Italian Renaissance. We are now in the same scenario. We will see a rebirth of humanity. And as the Italian Renaissance, for the very first time, celebrated art, knowledge, away from the old world. And I'll get through this when we go through the talk today. So I'll get straight into it. This talk is a combination of Future Now and Future How, and with all the latest research I'm doing for Future Next. And Future Next should be out in about 2 weeks' time. And again, available for free, because I think it's important for us to add as much value to humanity in times of uncertainty as possible. So welcome to our future. A future where our dreams become a reality, and so do all our nightmares. Welcome to the future, where it's not survival of the fittest anymore, it is now survival of the quickest. Welcome to a future where efficiency is being superseded by robustness. And welcome to a future where fundamental paradigm adaptation becomes your superpower. And welcome to a future where the business model of supply and demand is being replaced and disrupted by 6 new business models. And I'll get through some of them as we go through the talk today. The coronavirus has shaken the foundation of our societal and economic coexistence indefinitely. We are experiencing and watching in real time an uncontrollable collapse of everyday life and the world we knew it. And please bear in mind, if you think not much has changed, please take into account that we still have not seen the repercussions of the bankruptcies. We still don't know if this virus is mutating or not. We still don't know if we have a vaccine or not. We still don't know if there's herd immunity or not. We still don't know that if our immune system will get better if the virus has already been in our body or not. So what happens now? How we behave now, the actions we take now, the perspective we create now will change the way we do business, structure our societies, run our governments, the way we work, the way we collaborate, the way we consume, the way we travel, the way we educate, and what we spend money on, all at once. And we are all having a tough time. Some people are struggling to put food on their tables. Some people's whole careers have been wiped out. Some people with big businesses are seeing the crumbling of those big businesses. So we are all finding ourselves in uncomfortable places. And this is what happens to us as human beings. When we feel uncomfortable, we seek familiarity. We want to run back to what we wanted or what we used to have. But the problem with that is that the world we came from, we must remind ourselves that we were on the brink of exhaustion. Most of humanity was in a point of anxiousness and a slight depression. The environment was on a point of exhaustion. The ecosystems were being destroyed all around us. Somebody's mic is still on. Please, can you switch your mic off? Jai Akar, can you switch your mic off, please? Thanks, brother or sister. I don't know. Sorry. So what we have to realize is that this need for familiarity is something we need to let go of. And as human beings, we always do this. We always look for familiarity. We don't actually look for what it is we want. We just want to go back to some sort of safety, even if that safety and that familiarity was abusive to a certain extent. Now, I was watching a video the other day, and the guy was saying, we don't look for love when we grow up. We look for familiarity. And what that means is sometimes we find ourselves in similar relationships to what our parents had. And maybe our parents had an abusive relationship. And we find ourselves in a similar relationship. And the reason is we didn't actually look for love. We looked for familiarity. And so here we are needing in desperation to go back to some sort of normality. And I'm urging you not to want that. I am urging you to try and create something new, something that has the priorities of the planet, the priorities of employees, the priorities of consumers, and the priority of shareholders, all in one bag. You see, for the longest time, maybe 80 years or so now, we have prioritized growth over everything else. And unfortunately, in no ecosystem in the world can growth be going on 100% of the time. Imagine Earth in summer, always. Impossible. It's not possible for us to sustain long-term, trustworthy, transparent growth without us having times of sleeping and times of growth, times of sleeping and times of growth. So we have to start treating the world we live in more like an ecosystem rather than an arrow going straight upwards, which is something we've all been indoctrinated into. And how we've been indoctrinated into this is because of the stories that we've been told. The stories that we've been told by societies, by our families, by universities, none of them being malicious in any way, I don't want to say that, is that the stories they've been taught are the stories they've been taught, and they keep being handed down. And stories aren't all bad because they're an essential part of our species and the success of our species, because they get to also hand down wisdom from generation to generation. But be very aware that the stories we tell ourselves, listen to, and believe in have a profound effect on our perspective and what we think is reasonable. Now, these stories are either a fairy tale that we keep retelling ourselves, or a moment that we keep recounting over and over to ourselves. Stories stay with us. The problem is that these stories take on a life of their own. They move from whisper to wisdom, from fantasy to folklore, to the most dangerous place we have in our society, to a point called, that's how it's always been done. And when we get to that point to that's how it's always been done, when we stop questioning the whole macro story that we are living in, this is the dangerous place we are in. And so people wanting familiarity are just holding on to an old story that I think has had its sell-by date. And we've had many stories in our past as human beings that have had their sell-by date. Let me give you a couple examples. One, 150 years ago, slavery was normal. There was just, everybody had slaves. It was so normal, the slaves even thought it was normal. 100 years ago, women didn't vote. It was normal. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, women should vote. Then people were up in arms going, how dare you change the sort of concept of who should vote? Then 40, 50 years ago, we had child labor camps, and children were put into work camps, and without the fact that any of their health was important at all. And so we realized that we fell into a trap of thinking slavery was okay, thinking women couldn't vote, thinking children should be working because of stories that were handed down to us. And so we have to realize now is that we now are in a collective crisis. In this collective crisis, what we can do is be forced to think big, to consider every possibility, to reevaluate the failings of the past in order to be able to reimagine the possibility of a future. And the more fluid we are in the acceptance of something new, the more exciting the possibilities become. In fact, we should all adopt a fluid, interconnected, oceanic mindset. This means we are open, we are larger than life, and we are letting go of stories that never made sense and that haven't had made sense for years and years and years, but we've kind of just held on to them because we just thought, you know, that's just the way it's always been. And anybody who wants to talk about things that are brand new always get labeled as the unthinkable, and then the radical, and then the possible, and then the probable, then popular, then policy. And so what we have to do is we have to realize that we need to start asking bigger questions. We should stop asking for answers, but actually start to ask questions in order for us to reimagine the world that we want to move into. Now let's get practical a little bit, because over time, neuroscientists, anthropologists, and psychologists have written volumes about the amazing complexity of our inside world. In fact, over the last 50 years, the realizations and the research has been so profound that we have changed our idea of Newtonian science and swapped it with quantum science. And the one principle that we have realized between those two sciences is that Newtonian science says that reality is objective and outside of us. Quantum science says reality is subjective and inside of us. And so just that little detail is a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves and how we show up into the world. And over time, neuroscientists, anthropologists, and psychologists have been so deep into writing these things, but many people have been saying, nah, that's not true. Oh, that's just rubbish. Oh, that's just a hippie way of thinking, without realizing all they're doing is holding on to old stories, not accepting any new ones. At the same time, economists, sociologists, and scientists have written volumes about the complexities of our outside world. But somehow, since the 1940s, where the rules of business have been put into place, they haven't been changed. You see, it was in the 1940s, after World War II, that the New World Order was introduced by the Bretton Woods system. It was the same time that the United Nations was created, NATO was created, and the IMF was created. All of these systems were focused on growth, debt, and creating a new world economic system. Now, don't take anything away, because they were incredibly successful in many ways, but we realize today, how can we be living on an earth that we are destroying? even the dumbest bacteria don't kill their hosts because they want to keep living in their hosts. Here we are killing where we are living just based on the fact of having a better balance sheet. And so we could see that the leaders of today in some countries around the world are still stuck in this old way of measuring success. And you can see it because of how much money they spend on war compared to education and hospital healthcare. Just look at how much they spend, the trillions they spend there, and then they don't have money for hospitals. And it shows us that that old way of leadership is time to say goodbye. And it's great that this coronavirus has come because it's got us to force us to start thinking about something new, collapsing the old world so the new world can start coming into play. This is a renaissance. This is something new that we are moving towards. And the best way for us to prepare ourselves is to ask questions. And not questions that start with why, but questions that start with how. You see, why says, why is this like this? How is, how do I change this? The how puts us into the future. The why keeps us in the past. So we need to collectively ask a new how. And man, what a time to be alive. Because collectively now, we can start a new conversation about shifting our focus towards a more fair, a more sustainable, a more transparent world that prioritizes the planet, human beings and animals, and not just balance sheets and Wall Street numbers. But I just want to get practical as well, because being philosophical about the world around us is fantastic. And we have to adopt a mindset that's adaptable, to be flexible, to be optimistic, to be able to see something new. Because as quantum science says, our focused attention is our reality. And so the more we focus on possibilities, the more we create those. The more we focus on problems, the more we stay stuck in those. And so just 5 things I want to cover with you practically before we can go into a Q&A is nobody has an answer for when this is coming out. I mentioned it earlier. We don't know if this virus is mutating. We don't know about herd immunity. We don't know if there's a vaccine. We don't know any of these sort of things. And so we realize that social interactions for the foreseeable future are not going back to normal. There's no way they can. We need new sensors checking our health so that the body of humanity isn't being sick because one person is sick. So those sensors have to come into play. Vaccines have to come into play. Health warning systems have to come into play. Health certificates have to come into play. There's a whole new bunch of rules that need to come into play. I was actually reading the future of travel, some articles about the future of travel, and they were saying that airports since 9/11 have become very military. And because there was like sort of like war, Corona is going to make airports very consumer friendly. And we're going to start seeing new ways where we don't have to interact with anybody because of the health risks. So for example, when you arrive at an airport, your cell phone will give a signal to the airline that you've arrived. Somebody will come get your bags from the car, put your bags onto a machine from the car so that you don't have to go through any sort of check-ins, and they'll have infrared cameras all over the airport to check your body temperature as you start moving into your flight. So social interactions are really going to be changed for the foreseeable future. The second thing, which I think is incredibly important, is that work has changed fundamentally. Work is not a place we go to anymore. Work is something we do. In fact, it's always been something we do, but since the 1500s in Italy, where we saw the Medici family build the first office to show their growth and wealth, we are still building offices as a sign of ego, as a sign that we have done so well. It's a sign that we've actually been successful. But the truth is, I know so many companies now that have said their staff don't need to go back to work. Optus, the second largest telco in Australia, 8,000 staff don't have to go back to work. Twitter, don't have to go to work. American Express, don't have to go to work. So many companies are saying we don't have to go to work anymore. And I think the concept of remote work is going to be swapped out by a called distributed work, which means that there is no one major head office and everybody's remote. Distributed work means it's already in a distributed way. Also remember that the job market is not going to be the same anymore. We have over 150 million jobs being lost, 500 million people going back into poverty, and now we move into an era which I'm calling forced entrepreneurship. we have to now stop looking for employment, but really start to find a new way for us adding value to the world so we can be gifted through us adding a new value through our own entrepreneurial drive. Third, one of my favorite things is that we are loving the world with less pollution in it. We're loving the world that sees so much nature coming back into our lives. And so what we're seeing is cities like Bogota, Berlin, London, and Paris are just some that are now bringing new laws in that says no cars inside the city. Paris has already introduced 50 kilometers of inner city streets that no cars are allowed in. All the cities I mentioned are bringing bicycles into the cities, bringing new bicycle shops, subsidizing bicycles. So we're going to see a resurgence of how we go about traveling and commuting inside cities. And I want to go through the 3 business models that I think are going to be changing, and then we can open up to a Q&A. So the supply and demand business model, which is something that the Industrial Revolution created for us, production, efficiency, and profitability, economies of scale was always what we spoke about. But that's all changed because it doesn't matter the economies of scale because everybody's got access to the same information now. So everybody is cutting their prices down. Everybody's got access to the same production lines and logistics. So that really doesn't matter. So there are 6 new business models. I'm going to take you through 3 of them, the 3 of my favorite ones. The first one's called the transformation economy. This is an extension of the experience economy. If you remember back to a few years ago, the experience economy was really pushed forward or created by Starbucks, where they created the third space, not home, not work, but the third space and experience, which made the coffee so expensive. It wasn't just the coffee, it was the experience. Now we move into something even further into experience called the transformation. Thing is really the concept that you are paying to have your life transformed by an experience, not just experiencing the experience, but actually transforming your life through it. 2 examples. Burning Man, if you haven't been, I highly recommend it, or Africa Burn in South Africa, and there's so many of these festivals going on around the world, you do very much come out of it a transformed human being. Another one is CrossFit. CrossFit is not just a gym, but you come through it transformed to look like a bit of a He-Man. So transformation economy. Second one is called the smartness economy. You see, at the turn of the 19th century, if you wanted to make anything amazing, you added electricity to it. A drill, a knife, a washing machine, all of this now has got electricity attached to it. We're kind of comfortable with that. But the smartness economy is making what electricity was then, now is AI. So AI is the new electricity. And when you attach AI to anything, it becomes smart. So cell phones become smartphones, stereo speakers become smart speakers, and cars become autonomous cars. So if you want to make something become better, you have to figure out how you attach AI to it. And I've already seen lights that have got AI to it that change the mood of the room based on the facial expressions that you're carrying, or a cup that tells you haven't had enough water throughout the day. So AI is the new electricity, and it'll create the new economy called the smartness economy. And my favorite business model, which I think we all love, is called curate, match, and facilitate. Curate, match, and facilitate is best described by Spotify. You see, Spotify curates music, matches it to you based on your personal taste and machine learning, and facilitates it to you for $5 a month. Cheaper, better, faster. So we understand that if we could have clothes chosen for us, like Spotify chooses music for us, if food would get chosen for us, like Spotify chooses music for us, how much happier, how much easier, how much more efficient would our lives be? How much more seamless would it be? And so ultimately, if you are designing a business, or if you're thinking about getting out there, if you're wanting to look for a job, I recommend you can keep looking for a job, but also look at becoming more multidimensional, multifaceted. How can you go about adding value to the world and solving a problem that's close to your heart? So have both of an entrepreneur mindset and a job seeker, but don't rely on the job seeker alone, because no company can guarantee you that. If you are a business owner, remember that there's 3 different things that human beings want. And these 3 different human things, all human beings want them. 1, hyper-personalization. We love brands that talk to us and only us. Spotify is a perfect example of it. Hyper-seamlessness. We want things to be as easy as possible. I was listening to the CEO and chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO and chairman. And he was saying, they asked him, why do you think Zoom became the best sort of interaction like we're talking on it now. He said it's because of simplicity. You could join Zoom as quickly as possible, and it was the seamlessness of it. And then we have hyper trust. We want to trust brands as much as we can. And so we want to be able to create as much trust as much as we can. So in the world, they're being flooded with information. Who do I trust? And actually who I trust is somebody who has the same values as me, somebody who's not trying to sell to me, and somebody who's just adding value to the world. So hyper-personalization, hyper-trust, hyper-convenience, following something close to your heart and solving a problem in the world. Remember, the internet has got 5 billion people on it. We'll soon have 8 billion people on it. All you have to do is find 0.0001% of them to each give you $1 a month for your service, and you could live very comfortably for the rest of your life. So we have to stop waiting for organizations to give us jobs and create opportunities that are networked rather than hierarchical. That is my talk for today. I hope you've taken some valuable insights out of it. Again, my books are available for download. Please go and download them. I've written them especially to try and help as many people as possible. So I am now open for questions. So if you guys want to ask any questions, please go ahead.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for that. That was really, really exciting and interesting. One question from us before we open it up to the floor. You spoke about being more multidimensional to be competitive in this new world and create opportunities for yourself. As a young student kind of just graduating, what are some tips you would share for them to start thinking about this, and how can they start doing that in incremental steps?
Great question. Remember that your unique flavor, your unique curiosity is what the world is going to celebrate post-COVID-19. And so as a student, what you need to do is not throw away what you studied, because keep what you've studied. But remember, there's another million kids out there who've studied what you've studied. So how do you stand out from the crowd? So there's a lot of clever people in the world. You can't be clever. It's not good enough anymore. You have to be unique and clever. And so you have to combine your curiosity together with your cleverness and now create a very unique offering and service. What you then do is you become multidimensional. In other words, I watched this Swedish vlogger who lives in Norway. She makes vlogs, she makes jewelry, she's an artist, she runs meditation classes, she writes books, she runs workshops, multi-adaptive. Me, I write books, I run workshops, I do talks, I speak for you guys, I've got 2 or 3 businesses, multi-adaptive. Because what you need to do is you need to find people around you that have skills that you don't have, partner with them, and then network into each other. It's no more this idea that, oh, I must go get a job, and oh, I hope my job doesn't cut my salary, or I hope this company doesn't go down. That's finished. It's finished, because which company can guarantee you employment? Nobody can. The only guarantee you have is your own skill set, your own audaciousness and courage to be able to create something in the future rather than waiting.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that goes back to forced entrepreneurship that's coming. So really find what makes you you, find what makes you unique, be curious about it, and go out there and network with the people that can help you make that happen, and just get started and see how many things you can put together, essentially. Great question. So
look, one other thing is that you don't have to be different people in all the different things you do. You must be the same person doing the same thing in a multiple media offering. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not a baker somewhere, and then a strategist, and then a personal trainer. I'm just a strategist. I just apply that skill set to all the things that I'm involved in. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So guys, the floor is open for questions. Please write your questions in the chat, or you can just come off mute and ask John. Okay, so we have a question from Harinder.
What stirs you the most about the shift from human power to machine AI power? Stirs me the most. Okay, well, I don't know what stirs me, but we mustn't be scared of it. I saw an ad, an anti-electricity ad from the turn of the 19th century. I posted it on Instagram, actually, and it had people dying around electricity poles. Like people dead and fried, and they were just having a terrible time. We are now doing the same to AI. We're doing the same to 5G. It's as human beings, what we do is we fear the unknown. Rather than becoming excited about it and integrating it into our lives, what stirs me about it is the potential of upgrading us as human beings. Imagine having the opportunity to remember or access all the information in the world just by thinking about it. And so that's a very, very powerful thing for us to have at an opportunity. So instead of fearing the unknown, explore it. Just because in the past, everybody feared 2G, 3G, oh my God, 4G. We find everything is carrying on. Now we've got 5G. Now we've got AI. Remember, maybe you guys are too young, but I remember at the turn of the 20th century, Y2K was the biggest thing. Everybody thought that Y2K was going to shut down all the computers in the world. Planes were going to fall out the sky. Nothing happened. So what we have to do is become brave and audacious and courageous in exploring them.
Great, thank you for that. Saad, I saw you raised your hand. Do you have a question for John?
Yes, as John mentioned earlier, he said that social interactions won't be the same for a foreseeable future. So how are we to interact with more people to grow, as a person or as a business, even for like entrepreneurship? You're supposed to make those connections and all, which I would, for example, I'm studying development and stuff. So I would go to GDCs, which are and different conferences to connect a lot more. So how are you supposed to do those when it comes to lesser social interactions?
Well, Saad, I mean, think about dating, dude. You can't even go dating. Forget about going to a conference. You can't even go on a date. I mean, let's not even worry about. So, look, do you have something to say, Saad? I saw you unmute.
No, it's cool.
Okay. So, look, a couple things. One, we have an option to now live in a borderless world. So, you used to go to these conferences and it was only the people that could afford to go to them and regional. Now, you can speak to people all over the world. So yes, you don't have the same human interaction, but what you have is this opportunity to connect to thousands of people more often and live in a totally borderless world. So that's the first way. If you look at the opportunities in now being digital only and not physical, physical actually hampered who you met and how often you met, taking away obviously the human engagement that we're missing. The second thing is how you build network now is putting out a unique voice, trying to help people so they can build trust with you and build a network with you. And so just like I'm doing right now is I'm just putting thought processes out. I'm just trying to put a new take on the future out that's unique to my curiosity and my fascination. And so what I'm doing is I'm networking right now. So just like I'm doing, you have this opportunity to network. You also can do it borderlessly. And what you have to do is forcing us to do is find a unique voice and share that more openly and more widely so that more people can get to know about your viewpoint. I hope that answers your question.
That surely does. Thank you, John.
Pleasure.
We have another question in the chat from Mariam. So it says, you mentioned change in the way we look for jobs and how entrepreneurship plays a role in that. How can someone starting out after graduation guide themselves into an industry without being a part of an already established corporation?
So look, I think it's not about the industry. Again, that question says, look, I tell you, I did a thing on Instagram the other day that said, I want to do a series called Ask John Sanei in 60 Seconds. And so I got a dozen questions, and each question I found at the end of it was looking for some sort of guarantee. So the question was, what should I study for the future? What business should I go into? What industry should I work into? And all three of those questions are faulty. Let me tell you why. Because none of those industries are guaranteed. None of those things you want to study are guaranteed. There is no guarantee. The only guarantee you have is what's close to your heart. What do you want to use your energy to solve a problem for? Using your skill set from university and trying to answer a question that's close to your curiosity and fascination, combine those and start an Instagram page, a YouTube page, make videos, write blogs, connect with other people, tell them about your thinking. Let that process become your beginning of moving into whatever industry it may be. So I'm on online. I've got a restaurant, which I'm not even opening after COVID happens. I've got talks, I've got books, I've got ebooks, I've got online courses. Look, it's not about what industry, it's about what my passion and curiosity and qualifications are brought into multiple different industries.
Then we have one more question, which is, how can we step away from a 9-to-5 working week and find opportunities for new things?
Look, it's not an easy process because we have been indoctrinated that the 9-to-5 is success. Do you go to a fancy office? Then you're successful. Are you wearing nice clothes to work? Yes, then you've got a job. And if you've got a job, then that's the whole concept. I got a degree and I got a job in a corporate and I'm going to be CEO one day. Then I'm ticked. That's finished. It just doesn't even matter anymore. So what we have to realize is that if you are stuck in the 9-to-5, which means that you've got payments of rent and those sort of things, fair enough. Keep doing that. Nobody says you must pull the plug. But what are you doing from 5 o'clock? What are you doing at lunchtime? Are you creating any new business models? Are you thinking about any new ways? Are you joining any new networking events? Are you reading something new? Are you going into your curiosity more? And so really my advice is have an affair with your new business. And if you ever have an affair or if you're ever in love with somebody for the very first 6 months, you can't get enough of that person. Do that with your new project. And you'll see that the deeper you dive into the subject, what starts to happen is you become a specialist. You actually become a thought leader in that space. And then slowly but surely you can start to leave your 9-to-5 as you start upskilling into what makes you more curious. But remember that the 9-to-5 is the industrial revolution's way of making us more productive. There's no reason we should be working 9-to-5. That's an old way of doing things, but it's an old story we're still holding on to.
Thanks for that, John. Keenan, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have a question for John?
Yeah, John, thank you so much for that talk. Really, really insightful. I just wanted to ask, you obviously speak about the fact that whenever we explore new things, sometimes we feel uncomfortable, we tend to run back to familiarity and normality. And I know that I'm certainly guilty of that on occasions. What do you recommend, I guess, firstly, how do you look out for those signs where you're going back to old familiar habits that aren't necessarily positive? But also, what do you use from sort of tips or tools that allow you to stay on that sort of guided, that straight line?
Have you started eating chocolates after 10 p.m. again? Is that what you're talking about? No, I'm kidding. So look, I have. Maybe I'm talking about myself here. So look, here's a couple things. One, starting with the end in mind is how clear are you in where you want to be? The more clear you are in where you want to be, the more discipline you have. The less clear you are where you want to be, the more motivation you need. And so if you want to lose weight and you have made a commitment that, you're going to Greece in a 4 months time and you want to be in a bikini, I think you'll look great in a bikini, Keenan. So that sort of thing is, it forces you to even wake up at 4:55 when you know your alarm's going off at 5. That decision that you made works backwards and creates discipline. The second thing is preparation. In other words, if you want to run the next morning, it's up to you to prepare your clothes the night before. If you are wanting to go vegetarian, you have to then prep your meals so that you're not starving by 3 o'clock and you grab the closest thing and it's not a vegetarian meal. So for me, those two things together with an accountability partner is you need an accountability partner because you'll like sway off and then you get somebody to bring you back. Now, this can be a mentor, a senior, your boss, your wife, but any of these things can help you as an accountability partner to be able to keep you on track. And so for me, start with the end in mind, become super clear about it. Prepare the day before for the next day, revisit your commitment that you've made, and have an accountability partner. Those three things will keep you on the narrow. So I don't think that, none of us are robots. We all fall off the wagon, but it's just really about fall off and then get back on, then fall off and then get back on. And eventually it's changed. You know what I mean? So familiarity also is our brain being lazy because it's just going through the same synapses that it's always gone through. And that's just us being lazy. So it takes a while for us to switch out of it. But once we're out of it,
no, that's awesome.
I hope that answers your question.
Really useful.
Sure.
Great. We have a couple more questions on the chat before we close. So Sameep, his question is, do you think that every month the pandemic continues, the industry will go down? A certain population doesn't use computers or technology as their means for communication. What are your thoughts on this?
Sorry, let me just say that again. The longer, let me read it. You mentioned change, no?
Samit, do you think that every month
the pandemic continues, the industry will go down? Which industry? A certain population still doesn't use computers. I don't know which industry, but okay, let me just talk about technology. Remember that today we have more people connected to more information than ever before in the history of humanity. All industries. Okay, good, thanks. Well, all industries is too broad because some industries are dying right in front of our eyes, like tourism and travel and restaurants and cinemas, and other industries are booming. And it's not even industries because it's not technology that's booming. Because look at Airbnb and bookings.com, dead. But then look at gaming, it's up, like going up. So it's not industry, it's within industries that actually is going to be changing. So look, a lot of people say to me, but what about the people that don't have connectivity? What about those poor people? And my response always to that is, we are better connected than ever before in history. Have you forgotten that just 10 years ago, we had 1 billion people connected to the internet? Now we have 5 billion people. That's a 500% jump. We mustn't forget about that. In India now, we have most of the population connected to free internet. That's an incredible wow moment. In Africa, we have more and more people connected to the internet than ever before. My domestic lady that worked for me in Cape Town when I used to live there had 2 cell phones. 2. And she used to be earning not a very big salary. So I don't want to get caught up in what about the people? What about the people who have all the new communication? And what about the fact that it's becoming cheaper and cheaper? And what about the fact that they're making it a human right to be connected? And what about that 8-year-old girl in Malawi that all of a sudden has a smartphone that costs $10, where the smartphone used to cost $150? Now it's only $10. Now she can access it at a free Wi-Fi hotspot, which are popping up in Malawi, giving her access into educating herself on something new. What about her? So I disagree with the fact that many people don't have. I'm more focused on the people that do have, and then I want to try and help more people get connected. Because it's easy to feel sympathetic for the world. Oh, shame, what about them? No, but what about empowering them rather than feeling sorry for them? And this, I write about it in my first book, Future Now, is that sympathy and empathy are very different. We must become clear on them. Sympathy is a victim mindset. Empathy is a creator mindset. Oprah doesn't feel bad for women. She empowers women. See the difference? You can sit and feel sorry, or you can get busy empowering. And so when you feel sympathetic, it doesn't help anybody. When you want to get empowering and coach them, that's when you start moving forward. And so for me, it's let's empower together. Let's get more people connected.
Great, thanks for that. We have another question, John. It is, do you think that exponential growth theories will still hold true post-COVID? Many companies have had to close down, and this has halted growth. Will this make universities and companies providing training programs about exponential growth irrelevant? Should they redesign their frameworks?
Okay, why don't you ask 15 questions in one? Great questions, but let me start with the first one. Is the companies that are not making it through this are the ones who haven't adopted exponential technologies. You understand that? Is that this, I mean, I was in another webinar and I said, you know what's just happened more than anything else is that 2030 arrived 10 years too early. That's what's happened. The future arrived much quicker than any of us expected it to. And so now we're finding ourselves, the businesses that have never been here in 10 years are dying now. And so now we have to utilize exponential technologies in order to be able to build network businesses, not hierarchical ones. We need businesses with no legacy. We need fresh, brand new ways of building adaptive businesses, flexible businesses, robust businesses. And these businesses are based on exponential technologies. So if anything, I think we need to focus more on building new network business models rather than the old supply chain, supply and demand business model. So if anything, this has killed the businesses that have never been here anyway in 10 years.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Neil Johnson, which says, do you think going for a master's is better than starting to look for a job after graduation? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think the quicker you get busy in creating your own path, the better. There's nothing wrong with wanting a master's. There's nothing wrong with wanting a PhD. There's nothing wrong with wanting a degree. But remember, millions of other people have them. Millions. So what you're doing is competing in a market that's just, I call it the surplus society. We have a surplus of doctors, engineers, accountants, doctors, PhDs, a surplus. That's the problem, is that the Industrial Revolution created the roles we needed to play inside the Industrial Revolution. Remember, the Industrial Revolution was a production line. You had the focus of efficiency, profitability, and production. That's what you did. And so what did they do? They created schools that looked like factories and university courses that would get you to fit into the roles that the production line required. That production line moved away from factories and became corporations, but it's still the same production line. Remember now, these courses that university gives us are mostly about the old roles we needed to play. So your masters, bless you, go and get it. But remember, you're getting out into the marketplace competing against 20 million people with a master's. So what's going to make you stand out is not having a master's, but making your master's more personal, making what you're studying more curious about what you're curious about. So, you know, I was watching this other lady online, and she was a baker, like a top master baker, right? Like, let's say she got a master's in baking. But she was baking only gluten-free because she was gluten-free and her kids were gluten-free. And she had a blog and a vlog and a recipe book and a YouTube channel and a She wasn't just stuck on, okay, I'm a master baker. I'm just going to go open up a bakery store. And so remember that the question you're asking is yes and no. Go and do your master's. But if you don't personalize it, you're competing against another million people that have got the same thing. And that's the problem.
Thanks for that, John. We have a question from Stephen. How to identify a new and successful business idea from an already dying businesses in this pandemic situation?
So look, again, the question is asking what business I should start. The question you should be asking is, what makes me most excited? What am I curious about? What shines brightest for me? And this is the fundamental question, because remember, when you're excited about something, time disappears. When you're excited about something, you can research that topic for 18 hours without realizing you've been doing it. And that 18 hours feels like 5 minutes. That's what you want. If you get into that flow state, everything changes. And so don't ask what business you should go into. Ask what makes me most excited. Dive deeper into that topic and then start creating a business and a solution and a service and a product out of that. So the best example I can give you is me. I didn't go to university. I mean, I did, but I haven't done anything that I studied at university. And in fact, I only went to university because my mom said I must have a piece of paper behind my name. I hated university. I hated school. But then when I got out of school, I was so fascinated with business, with human psychology, and with futurism that I went through businesses. I started them. I got bankrupt, a whole bunch of different things. But now I'm so fascinated with human psychology. I'm so fascinated with futurism, business strategy, and quantum science that when I mix these four, I then start talking about them, running businesses about them, writing books about them. And you know who else is fascinated and curious about these four topics? Nobody. I'm the only one that I know of that's combined these four. And that's the real trick, is that I stand out from everybody else because my message is more unique than anybody else's. Can't hear you, huh?
The questions keep coming. So if you have some more time, we have 2 more questions, sure. And then we can close it at that. In this age of technology, we easily get lost in the endless sea of information, repeated routine of schoolwork, which makes our interest and passion become exhausted. How can we grow to be more excited, to find passion and pipe those up in every single day? How can we be liberated?
Great question, bro. I mean, is it Luana, boy or girl? I don't know.
It's a guy.
Boy.
It's a guy.
Eh? So look, great question. And you know, a lot of people ask that. I don't know what my excitement is. How do I find my passion? And the answer to that question is ask yourself more often. That's it. You just haven't asked it before. So you've been following what your parents taught. Again, our parents are not malicious. I don't want to take anything away from them. But their parents were shocked and horrified that there was a television in the lounge. Today, our parents are horrified. We want to sell things on Instagram. It's just the same thing. One generation to the next generation to the next generation is horrified. So what that generation does with no maliciousness is they do what we did, which means get a university degree because it guaranteed me a job. And in today's world, it's not the answer. The answer is what makes you most excited and unique. So Luan, ask yourself that question more often. What makes me most excited? How can I make decisions based on curiosity, not what my parents want me to do? Don't tell your parents I said that. Not what education told me to do. Just be more excited.
Okay, and then the next question is, in the future, if this kind of pandemic arises again, how do we ensure that we will be prepared for it?
It will arise again and will continue to arise as we destroy more and more ecosystems. These viruses live very happily inside bats. Very happily. They've got no issue. The corona is normal. In fact, I've heard dogs have got lots of corona, but they need them to live. When we destroy ecosystems, these viruses must continue living and they jump. So the answer is, can we stop prioritizing profit and prioritizing the planet for our own survival? Not even, let's not even get philosophical, just to survive. The smartest bacteria in the world, who is us, is destroying our host body, which is the most ridiculous thing. So first, can we as consumers only buy from brands that are kind to the earth? Can we only start businesses that are kind to the earth? Can we only support companies and work for companies that are kind to the earth? That's the first way to stop the pandemic coming. If it does come again, which I think it will do if people don't wake up, is that what we have to do is just make sure our immunity system is strong. Because they've now done a test, 42% of people have HIV in their bodies. Do you know that? I just watched that recently. Because it's dormant. And only when our immune system drops does it wake up. Just like cancer. Cancer is in all our bodies. But as soon as our immune system drops, does it wake up? So we just have to keep our immune system strong. And as consumers, become consumer activists. As entrepreneurs, only run businesses that are safe and planet-centric rather than consumer-centric. And we can all become a new possible future if we decide to be.
Brilliant view. And last question for today is from Sagar. Just lost my job due to COVID-19 and currently looking for one in the UAE. Want to know what strategy I should adopt in securing an employment.
Have you listened to the talk at all today? We have now entered something called forced entrepreneurship. Jobs are not guaranteed anymore. That is an old way of doing things. I'm sorry to be so straightforward. But look, I lost all my income and I'm an entrepreneur. So what have I done? I've been spending this time rethinking my business, bringing it up to the front. So if I'm just looking for a job, I'm waiting for a company to give me an opportunity rather than me creating an opportunity. So I know it might be difficult for you to become an entrepreneur, but this is the new way. Remember, when we moved from the agricultural times to the industrial times, all the farmers lost their income. Only the farmers that retrained themselves in the Industrial Revolution continue to be successful. So if you're going to stay a farmer in the industrial times, you're not going to be winning. Now, if you're staying an industrial job seeker in a new quantum future, you're not winning. So stop trying to look for work. You can carry on working for work, but start creating something new, a new service, a new product. Remember, there's 5 billion people on the internet. All you have to do is get 0.0001% of them to give you $1 a month. That's it. It's not a big task. So think about what is it, that service that you want to bring to the world. I mean, people are making millions by doing this. That's it. Makeup. Are you mad? I mean, can you get more simple? Okay. And that's it. That's all they do all day. I don't even know how much makeup they can put on. And other people are doing their hair and they're making millions. So what is your unique skill set? Go and sell that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. I think that closes out all the questions.
Well, if you can join me for a makeup tutorial tomorrow at 4 o'clock. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Well, we'll get that one organized. But yes, thank you so much for your time. Really insightful information, really inspirational. Hopefully this gives a lot of food for thought for young graduates that are coming out out of university and out of the traditional kind of structures in this time. So thanks so much for your time, John. And as always, it's been a great pleasure to have you collaborating with us with Ojo.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys. See you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, John. Take care.
Ciao. Pleasure. Bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.